Hey, it's Sunday, May 17th, 2026. Grab your coffee, get comfortable. This is Newspresso. I'm Nisha.
And I'm Aditya. Cozy blanket mood, but the news did not get the memo. Let's get into it.
Okay, first up, this one actually got to me a little. El Niño looks set to emerge soon, maybe by May to July, and it could stay strong into 2027.
Right, and the phrasing around it is doing a lot. NOAA's talking about a clear shift toward a warm Pacific, which means altered atmospheric patterns and jet streams.
And for India, that's the nervous part. The IMD is already signaling a monsoon forecast around 92% of the long period average. So people are immediately thinking drought risk.
Which is wild because the same pattern can mean very different things depending on where you are. Some places are worrying about too little rain, others about heavier rains and flooding.
Exactly. Forecasters are saying the impact could stretch from California's bays to the Argentine littoral and even into Europe and the Americas more broadly.
And NOAA is basically saying yes, timing and strength are still uncertain, but the direction is clear enough that communities should prep now.
That part matters so much. Crops, water supply, coastal infrastructure, it's all in the mix.
And then there's the whole high tide flooding and coastal storm angle in the US. Too many systems getting pushed around by one climate pattern.
Real talk though, this is one of those stories where the science is global, but the consequences are painfully local.
Yeah, and if the stronger forecasts pan out, everyone from India's plains to parts of the Americas is going to be watching the sky a lot more carefully. Okay, moving from weather to geopolitics, Modi's stopover in Abu Dhabi was way more than a quick airport moment.
Yeah, the UAE and India moved fast. They signed a framework for a strategic defense partnership, and energy security was right at the center of it.
The big headline is ADNOC expanding crude storage in India to 30 million barrels. That's not a tiny adjustment. That's a serious strategic reserve move.
And that matters because India wants more cushion if Hormuz gets disrupted. There were also talks about storage in Fujairah and gas reserves in India.
In other words, please keep the oil flowing, thanks, which honestly is pretty much the mood of global energy politics right now.
Plus, there were about $5 billion in UAE investments announced, including banks and infrastructure financing. So this wasn't just about barrels and tanks.
Nope, it's broader than that. Defense collaboration, logistics, ship repair clusters, the Maitri virtual trade corridor. It's all being tied together.
And Modi stressing a free, open and safe Strait of Hormuz was a pretty direct signal about where India stands.
Especially with oil markets hovering above $100 per barrel because of war and shipping risk. That context makes the whole visit feel very urgent.
For regular people, the practical hope is simple. More energy security, maybe some insulation from price shocks.
Yeah, and the next real test is whether these deals actually turn into storage, LNG, LPG and defense exchanges fast enough to matter.
All right, shifting to another very delicate geopolitical thread, Trump's comments after Beijing have left allies a little uneasy.
A little? He sat beside Xi Jinping and then basically said the Taiwan arms package may or may not move forward. That'll keep everyone up at night.
He told Fox News, I may do it, I may not do it, which is classic Trump's phrasing, but this time the stakes are massive.
Because this is about a $14 billion package that would bolster Taiwan's defenses. So it's not just a line, it's a real signal.
And it lands right in the middle of America's strategic ambiguity toward Taiwan. The US has long tried to be unclear, but not in a way that feels random.
Exactly. Lawmakers from both parties are reminding Washington about the Taiwan Relations Act, which says the US should provide defense capabilities.
Taiwan's own government is also pushing that point, saying this isn't just a commercial issue, it's a security commitment.
Meanwhile, Xi is framing Taiwan as China's most important issue and warning that mishandling it could trigger clashes or conflicts.
So now you've got trade talks, a Boeing deal, and this huge unresolved security question, all sitting in the same diplomatic room.
Honestly, who even relaxes after a summit like that? The answer is nobody.
And the next watch point is obvious, whether the package moves and whether Washington's wording gets any clearer at all.
Okay, back to markets, and this one is pretty rough. The rupee has crossed 96 per dollar for the first time.
Oof, that's a very visible kind of bad news. And it's happening while Brent crude has surged above $109 a barrel.
Which is the sort of combo that makes everyone in finance start staring into the middle distance.
Because it feeds imported inflation fears and widens trade deficit worries, and then risk appetite gets hit across the board.
The Sensex and Nifty both closed lower too. Sensex down about 161 points to 75,238. Nifty down roughly 46 points to 23,643.50.
And the weakness wasn't random. random. Metals, oil and gas, PSU banks, and realty were leading the decline.
Meanwhile, IT and some consumer names were hanging on in places, which is very much the market version of somebody in the group project did the assignment.
That is painfully accurate. But the bigger point is the rupee weakness adds pressure to a rally that already needs global liquidity and calm.
And those two things are not exactly abundant right now. Higher bond yields, a volatile currency, geopolitical tension, it's a messy mix.
For regular investors, the takeaway is that oil, currency, and inflation are all chained together. You really can't watch one in isolation.
Yep, and until authorities signal some kind of stabilization, the market mood is likely to stay cautious.
Now, this one is a bit inside baseball, but it matters a lot. The Maharashtra Charity Commissioner has ordered the Sir Ratan Tata Trust to defer its board meeting.
And that is not the kind of sentence that makes anyone at headquarters relax.
The order came amid an inspector's inquiry into trustee composition. The complaint is that 3 of 6 trustees are perpetual, which could violate the Maharashtra Public Trust Act.
And it was described as an ex-parte directive, so without a prior hearing. That's a big procedural wrinkle.
What makes it bigger is that this is about Tata Trusts, which together hold a controlling stake in Tata Sons.
So now, governance, legal compliance, and strategic corporate planning are all tangled together. Lovely.
The timing matters too, because board decisions could affect possible listing talks and even leadership questions, like the reappointment of N. Chandrasekharan.
And the legal argument is split. Critics say the 2025 amendment caps perpetual trustees at 1/4 of the total, while the trusts say the rule applies prospectively.
That's the part I find interesting. It's not just about one meeting. It's about who gets to define continuity inside one of India's biggest philanthropic structures.
Plus, the Bombay High Court-related petitions add another layer of mess. Some were reportedly withdrawn or disposed of in parallel proceedings.
So what happens next could change how the trusts oversee Tata Sons and shape the group's future direction.
Yeah, and for a conglomerate this large, even governance row is never just a governance row.
Okay, staying with the weather, but zooming back to India. The IMD says the southwest monsoon could hit Kerala by May 26, with a model error of plus or minus 4 days.
So basically early onset alert, but with the usual meteorological asterisk.
Exactly. Forecasters are seeing favorable conditions over parts of the South Bay of Bengal, the Andaman Sea, and the Andaman and Nicobar Islands in the next 24 hours.
Which sounds promising, but this year has that El Nino cloud hanging over it.
And that's why people are being careful. Early onset doesn't automatically mean a strong season later on.
Right, because the same reports are warning that El Nino could dampen rainfall as the season goes on.
For farmers though, the early start could still help with Kharif sowing if the rains actually arrive on schedule.
And Kerala's being watched as the bellwether, which means the whole country sort of starts looking at that one state like it's the monsoon's opening act.
That is such a weirdly accurate way to put it.
There are also alerts out already, yellow and orange in places like Idukki and Malappuram because heavy rainfall is expected soon.
So this is one of those good news but don't celebrate too hard yet situations.
Yup, the ocean temperatures, winds and atmospheric convection all have to line up, and that's the part no one can control.
Now to education, and honestly this one is exhausting. NEET-UG 2026 was cancelled after a leaked guess paper matched many questions.
Yeah, that's the kind of leak that makes the whole system look shaky. The exam was conducted on May 3 and cancelled on May 12.
The NTA has announced a re-exam for June 21st, with registrations, centers and fees carried over.
And the government is already talking about a bigger change, computer-based testing from 2027 onwards.
But the retest itself will still be offline, so the CBT shift is not immediate.
That distinction matters because students and families need to know what's happening now versus what's changing later.
Meanwhile, the CBI has filed an FIR, questioned suspects, and there have already been 7 arrests by mid-May.
And the alleged leak seems to have involved insiders and kingpins, which makes it worse because this isn't just a random glitch.
Tamil Nadu has pushed back hard too, saying medical admissions should be based on class 12 marks and calling for NEET's abolition.
And BIMA wants decentralization, fast-track courts, and stronger punishment. Basically, make it harder to game the system and easier to trust it.
What I keep coming back to is how much stress this dumps on students who did nothing wrong.
Yeah, at minimum they need clarity and fast. The trust deficit is doing serious damage here.
Alright, sports time. And this one was pure IPL chaos. KKR beat GT by 29 runs at Eden Gardens to stay in the playoff hunt.
And the innings was ridiculous. Finn Allen went off for 93 from 35 balls, which is just wow.
Then Ankrish Raghuvanshi stayed unbeaten on 82 of 44 and Cameron Green chipped in with an unbeaten 52. That's how you get to 247 for 2.
That score already feels unfair. Like the scoreboard itself was warning Gujarat Titans to reconsider their choices.
Exactly. And GT didn't exactly fold instantly. Gill made 85 of 49 and Butler scored 57.
But the sloppy fielding hurt them, and KKR kept squeezing in the middle overs.
Sunil Narayan's 2 wickets and a disciplined death spell helped finish the job, even with Sudarshan unbeaten on 53.
So KKR moved to 11 points from 12 matches and stays 7th, which means the playoff path is still narrow.
GT are still second on 16 points, but the 5-match win streak is gone. Momentum is a very sensitive little thing in cricket.
And Eden Gardens looked batting friendly, but the difference was how KKR handled the pressure and GT didn't handle the fielding.
That's the IPL in a nutshell, honestly. One huge innings, a few errors, and suddenly the whole table feels different.
Last one, and it's a big one emotionally for cricket fans. Virat Kohli says he'll play the 2027 ODI World Cup only if he can add real value.
That's a very Virat way to frame it. Clear, blunt, no sentimental fluff.
He said on the Royal Challengers Bengaluru podcast that he won't stay in an environment that questions his worth or makes him prove himself repeatedly.
And that's coming from a 37-year-old who's already retired from tests in 2025 and T20Is in 2024.
ODIs are still central for him though, and he says his preparation is constant, not event-based.
Which is basically him saying, don't ask me to perform a magic trick and then act surprised it took work.
And that is exactly the vibe. But he also made it clear that if he's told he's not needed, he'll walk away.
So the BCCI and selectors have to be explicit, no murky middle ground.
And this all sits inside the wider 2027 World Cup picture, with India's roadmap under Gambhir and Agarkar.
It's not just about one player either. It's about how India handles veteran value, role clarity and respect.
What's kind of striking is how self-aware he sounds. He's not begging for a spot. He's asking for clarity.
Yeah, and that's a pretty significant message heading into a tournament cycle this big.
Alright, that's us for today on Newspresso. Thanks for hanging out with us and stay tuned. We'll be back soon.
Yep, stay tuned. More Newspresso coming your way soon.